Hello again, Icario tribe. And you might wonder why, hang on, I'm not seeing Ollie and Shane talking on this video. And you would be right to wonder that. It's Ollie here, and I'm just here to let you know that there will not be a video component to this episode, including, which is the same as the last one because we lost that video file as well. Professionalism right here. There will be video for the next episode, guys. Don't you worry about it. And without further ado, I bring you How to Get Your Shit Together, I think part 7, Become an Implementer and Take Action. Welcome to the Icario podcast, helping you break free from the human zoo, optimize your life, and become a force to be reckoned with your hosts, Ollie and
Shane. Now, this is the follow-up episode to our series on how to get your shit together. And like I teased in the last episode, there is a problem here where in this series we've tried to provide actionable, high-leverage things to do to get your shit together, to level up your life in terms of your physical health and fitness, in terms of your social life, in terms of your emotional and mental state of being, in terms of your finances, and more. But even if we did a great job at talking about the best possible things you can do, even if everything we mentioned works brilliantly, it's kind of pointless if you don't do the things.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I'm stating the obvious here, right? If there's good advice and you don't take it, then it might as well not be there. Obviously, you have to do the thing, but this is really a core issue. And I think of this as it's the task of becoming an implementer. So if you want to level up your life, no matter whether it's along one of the dimensions we've talked about so far, no matter whether it is, no matter whether you're following our kind of advice or advice from a book or advice from a friend or whatever, whatever system you want to follow, it doesn't matter. If you are not an implementer, if you are not the kind of person who can say, here's a goal, here's a plan, and I'm going to execute that plan, I'm going to implement what I learn, then it's all pointless. And it also can be a form of essentially like mental masturbation to listen to the motivational thing and listen to the business plan thing and listen to the interview with the billionaire. And you're piling all this information, but why? You're not going to do anything.
I was literally just about to say mental masturbation, but I thought that the word came up and I was thinking, can we say that? And you went ahead and said it. So fair enough. But it perfectly illustrates the point. And just to illustrate the point even further, this is the basis of our Focus and Action Live class 2020. We have close to 100 entrepreneurs running through this class at the moment who are people who are, they know what to do. They know their shit, basically, but we're helping them just implement all of it. And this is how much of a problem this can be for people. Oftentimes it can be the case that it's like the curse of knowledge. And I don't know whether you'll mention this at some point today, because it's something you talk about quite often. But it's like, there comes a point where you know so much that it can have like a paralyzing effect. Like you know so many things and how, like you know how to get it wrong, in so many ways. You're like, oh shit, I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, and this is the reason why we do the Focus and Action class, because you could look at Icario and say, okay, we have all these ideas we have like these philosophical ideas about what it means to be a better human and live a better life and so on and so forth. But then we teach essentially, it's like a productivity class. Why? Well, this is why. Because we realized, and this comes from all the interactions we've also had with our students and our audience and stuff, we realized that this is essentially problem number one. And if we could talk and teach about all kinds of other stuff, but again, what's the point if you're not an implementer? So whatever you want to do, you have to become an implementer first. And you mentioned the example of entrepreneurs where, yes, if you meet someone who is an entrepreneur, guaranteed that they have, read a bunch of books, maybe taken some courses, they've read loads of blog posts and so on. They know all kinds of stuff about how to build a business. And it's not hard to come across really good advice. I mean, it's also not hard to come about really bad advice on this topic, obviously, as for anything. But it's not hard to come across really good advice. Like I mentioned, when I say the billionaire interview, I mean, it's true. You can find some of the smartest, most accomplished people in the world. You can find them talk about what they do, how they do it, how they think, and so on. on podcasts for free. So it's not hard to come across the right kind of information. But the problem is, so like you say, they know what to do. They have all kinds of ideas about how to build a website, how to get traffic, how to make a product, how to market it, how to do this, that, and the other. They're not doing it. This is the core problem. And that's one of the things I want to talk about, because it does seem like a meta life skill, so on a meta level, like almost on a higher level than all the other things, or on a more abstract level than all the other things, this matters. Are you an implementer or not? And it's also a potential problem of you can just have too much information. And like you said, at some point, it's almost worse to get even more information because you're just not taking action on any of it, and you're just getting more and more overwhelmed and so on.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, can you actually put this into action? Can you make this happen? And this is something that a lot of people struggle with enormously.
Yeah. And my own clients that I still take on as like for coaching, it was something that I realized I sort of had to sort of come to terms with this. When I first started coaching, I was thinking, I don't know enough, like a coach needs to be this all-knowing purveyor of wisdom. It needs to know about every single modality, every single technique, every single this and that. And it's just highly unlikely. But also something I realized was that a lack of knowledge is not the problem. It's a lack of implementation. It's a lack of taking action on the knowledge. And there's some people that I take on and some people I have a consultation with, and it's like, these people know more than me,
Yep.
They might be in the mid-30s or late 30s or whatever, and they've read so many books and know about all this stuff, but they've not implemented any of it. Because like more knowledge is not the solution here.
You can also think of this as, in other areas. So we've talked about entrepreneurs, but it applies to so many areas. And you can think about this right now. How many problems do you have that you actually know the solution to? How many things are there where you know how to accomplish something, but you haven't accomplished that thing yet? And one way to think of it is, you have some kind of a problem that you think, I can't solve this problem. Like, what if a friend came to you with this exact problem, with your exact situation? You probably would tell them what to do, right? In many cases, and this is the litmus test, in many cases, we are quite good at giving advice about the stuff that plagues us. And there are some examples that are very simple where we can see the implementation problem. And I think health and fitness is kind of the most obvious one. I don't think there are many people like going around, let's say with nutrition, eating donuts and ice cream and deep fried food and then being, surprised that they gain weight and that they're not healthy. It's like everybody knows this stuff is not healthy. And everybody can basically, again, like if a friend comes to you and says, what do I do about this? You tell them, well, stop eating this stuff, start eating this stuff, and maybe exercise. So the solution. This solution works. It's not the optimal solution, but we've talked before about optimal is overrated in most cases anyway. Like you know how to solve this problem, but you're not an implementer. And that's why you still have the problem. So what do we do about this? The first thing I want to talk about is one of the problems that we have with this situation, which relates to basically quick tips and hacks and consumables. Because a typical like cycle that we can find ourselves in is we have some problem or we have some goal. And I'm just going to say, like, if I say problem, it could be a problem like I have a health problem I want to solve, but it also could be a problem is I have a goal and I'm not there yet, right? I want to make more income and I don't have that yet, or I just want to achieve something, I'm not there yet. That's my problem. And I want to solve this problem. I gather some information about it, and then I don't do anything, or I maybe make some kind of meek attempts, but I don't actually change my life and start moving myself in the direction of this thing. And then that's frustrating because I still have the problem. So then what do? Well, more stuff, right? More stuff is the solution. And I think this is also a bit of a cultural thing, right? We kind of live in a consumer culture. So it's the idea that what I really need is a better thing. And we really like the idea that the solution lies in some quick tip, in some hack, in some, in something that I can implement, or in something that I can do or consume without changing my life. That's basically the thing. So if you think about it, and there's always I feel like there's this kind of fad. It's always happening. We always have these cycles of fads, where you think, okay, what I'm going to do is to solve my problem. I'm going to, in the morning, I'm going to have my coffee, but instead of having normal coffee, I'm going to have, mushroom coffee. And I'm going to add, some MCT oil into the mushroom. Now it's like bulletproof mushroom coffee. And look at me, I'm a biohacker now. This is going to give me focus and clarity and stuff. And this is the kind of thing we really like because it's exciting to learn about. Oh, wow, there's these mushroom things are really healthy. And there's this company that makes this mushroom stuff. And it's super expensive, but hey, it's important. So I'm going to buy this thing, right? So you have this action. I'm doing something about this. I clicked order, and then the MCT oil thing. Oh, we're going to add some coconut oil into this, and that feels special and different.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still having your morning coffee, so you haven't changed your life. You haven't made any significant change. It's just before you got up and had coffee, now you're getting up and you have coffee, but you feel better about it because you're doing something special that some guru maybe told you this is the secret, But yeah, that is kind of gratifying and really easy to do. But no amount of these kinds of hacks are going to actually make a significant difference. This kind of stuff can make a marginal difference. And I don't want to just say that anything that's quick or consumable is bad. I mean, sometimes that is useful. And, an example that's on my mind right now because of what we've been talking about in the course is, it's like keyboard and mouse, I had this problem at one point where I noticed I was typing a lot and I got wrist pain. And then, there's a consumable solution to this, which is you can buy an ergonomic keyboard and mouse, right? So your wrists are in a better position when you're using these tools. And that's a legit solution. I'm not saying that's bad, right? But it's one of these like 1% improvements. It's not going to, having the ergonomic mouse and keyboard it's a good decision to make, and it's going to help me do the work that leads to my business's success, but very peripherally. Like just switching from a normal keyboard to an ergonomic keyboard isn't going to make any difference unless the stuff I'm writing is already somehow useful, right?
Yeah. And it seems like the territory of procrastinators is that kind of stuff. It's like people who they would be better served by, like if they want to improve their health, they would be better served by getting in the gym more often and, maybe not having pizza 3-4 times a week, just to use my own example.
Yeah.
But instead it's like, what are the best supplements? What are the best supplements to buy? I need the best supplements. Like, right, okay. Even if you bought the best supplements, that will make up, and I'm being really generous here, 10% of a difference. That's super generous as well.
Yeah.
And that's if you got the best possible supplements, did all your research and took all of them every day without fail.
Yeah.
And that's after a month of doing that, you might see 10%.
Yeah.
You might. But if, it's just the focus. It's like majoring in the minor.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, I just want to emphasize that, and this happens to me as well, obviously, but there's something that's inherently satisfying about consumption. And there's something inherently satisfying about doing this kind of planning work. So it can be literal consumption where I do research on what's the best supplement and then I order that supplement. And there's something that feels good about that because it feels like I've made progress, but I haven't had to confront any of the difficult stuff. And it also goes for, quick tips and life hacks and so on. There's something satisfying about this idea that instead of doing kind of the hard work, or instead of doing the actual thing, I can tweak something. I can do something slightly differently. I can read this article with the 10 tips from the neuroscientist, and then one of these tips is it's just gonna make such a big difference, right? There's something really satisfying about that. And it's just something to be aware of. All I'm saying here is I simply want to direct your attention to when this is happening, and to be aware that no amount of this kind of consumption is going to actually get you to your goal. It is, if you're already on the way to your goal, then some of this stuff can smooth the path there, but you can't pile up consumption until you kind of reach your goal. That's not going to happen.
I'm smiling, Shane, because I can think of an example of this. I'm already kind of, I fall into this trap many times. I've always said to myself, I want to be that guy who's so well read. He can talk about a variety of topics. He's a very interesting fellow, very deep guy, man of substance. But what I end up doing, when I finally say to myself, right, enough is enough, I'm going to stop playing video games, I'm going to read. But first, I need to plan my reading. I need to write all the books in a big database, a big spreadsheet. I need to categorize them all, label them, tag them by topics. And I need to go onto my Goodreads and make sure it all syncs up. Yeah. And all these things. And then usually the case that when I've done that, I'll be like, I'll read a little bit and then I'm like, I'll kind of forget about reading again. And the next thing you know, it comes around to it like 3 months later. It's like, I just see this database I'd created in the depths of my Google Drive. Just like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So that seems to me is like a majoring in the minor. It's like rather than actually sitting down and doing the work essentially of reading 30 minutes a night and tracking it and making sure you're just reading. It's like a perfect plan to read. And if you still don't read, that plan, the information isn't going to make its way into your head.
Yeah.
I often think that when you buy books, like you talked about the consumable thing, when I buy a book, I get some sort of intrinsic satisfaction out of it. Like if I buy a book about dating or something, I'm like, that immediately, just from buying that from Amazon, I'm already a better dater. Yeah. I've not read a single page. I've not read a single word of that book, not a syllable.
Yeah.
But apparently by buying it, it's already transmuted as
it feels good.
It just feels good. It feels like I'm on the path, even if I never read it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, again, it's about awareness. Let's become aware of this. And it is also comical. Like, let's be real. It is pretty amusing to observe oneself doing this. And it is natural. And what I want to say is also that you can do this without falling victim to it, because if you just continually chase this kind of thing, if you're continually majoring in the minor, as you said, you're never going to get there, right? So it can become like this shallow form of retail therapy and shallow form of piling quick, useless tips into your brain that you immediately forget again. But whatever the purpose was that you came in with is going to remain unfulfilled. And obviously, like then in the longer term, that's really unsatisfying. So let's just be real about that. And you can still do this. One of the examples I've also used before, at least in our discussions, is with camera gear. So I have spent way more money on camera gear than I have to, for sure. And yes, of course, we work with camera stuff, but I have, I like to buy cameras and lenses and things to a degree where like most of the lenses I have, I don't need them, right? You could have one for the kind of work we do. You could have like one zoom lens and you just use that. You don't need another lens. But it's like, oh, but this one is, is such nice quality bokeh or whatever. But the thing is, so I still do that. I get excited about some new lens. I research it. I spend too much money on it. I get all excited about when it comes. I take some pictures of it and stuff. I do that. But the point is, I'm not delusional about needing this stuff. So I still get the joy of that, but I'm not sitting here going, well, I would make this video, but I have to wait for this lens because I can't make this video without this lens. No, of course, I can make this video on my phone. I don't need any of this stuff. It's just, I think of it more like, model trains as a hobby. It was like a completely, there's no utility to that at all. You're just playing with model trains and building this stuff because you like it, right?
Yeah.
That's how I think of, beyond the very basic equipment of you need a tripod, you need a camera or your phone on top of it, and then you can start making videos, right? Beyond that, basically a hobby. And I think this is what I would recommend. You can have this level of awareness where you can still do that. You can still have the fun parts of that, but without the destructive side of it, where you're constantly stopping yourself, or you're telling yourself, this is how I make progress. The way I make progress is by buying more stuff, by reading more articles, by making another plan, by changing my plan, and so on. You do that instead of making progress. No, you make progress and you buy some stuff and so on as a hobby, next to it.
Yes, it feels like a distraction or like a delusion where if you actually believe and you actually believe the thought that's telling you, I actually need this new lens for this video and I can't make this video until I have this lens.
Yeah.
It's like a delusion. You've not seen that you can totally make the video without it.
Yeah, and most likely you're fooling yourself, or most likely you're afraid of something. And you keep telling yourself this story because you'd rather do that than confront the thing that you're afraid of, or doing the, stepping into the unknown, for example, might be the problem. And yeah, it is a delusion. So that's the first thing, become aware of this, watch yourself do this, watch your own behavior and watch it with amusement. Watch it with amusement. I think another mistake here would be to have a self-punishing attitude. It's like, oh, I'm such a loser. I did it again. And now I'm going to buy something to make myself feel better or something,
Yeah.
It's like it just continues the cycle. No, watch it with amusement. This is one of the strange things about human beings is that, we like doing this and we tend to fool ourselves in this way. And that's fine as long as you don't lose sight of what's really going on. So, to what it really comes down to is, again, something that is in a way blatantly obvious, but I do think it's worth saying. Just this, if you want to change your life, you have to change your life and you can't buy your way there, right? So if you want And in fact, one of the ways I think about this is if there is some goal that I have not accomplished yet, and that that I'm not, the way I see it is, I'm not the kind of person yet who accomplishes this thing. So I have to become a different person. In some cases, I have to become a dramatically different person, and I have to change my life dramatically in order to get the thing that I want. And in some cases, it's much less dramatic. So let me give you 2 examples of this. When I started out as an entrepreneur, I realized many things were the way I live, the way I think, the way I behave is just really far away from what a successful entrepreneur does. And in many ways, I really had to radically change my life and radically change who I am in order to become the person for whom building a business and running a business and so on is easy. And for example, when it comes to leadership, I really struggled with this a lot. I really struggled with the idea of, asserting my goals, for example, in front of kind of directing a group of people, anything like that, because I was very much, I'd rather disappear into the background, basically. And so it was just clear to me, I can't continue being like this and build a business that involves more people than just me. And because I wanted to build a business that involves more people than just me, it was clear like big changes need to happen. And sometimes it's very unpleasant. That journey can be very unpleasant, but it was just clear to me this has to happen. And yeah, no amount of buying gadgets or books or putting oil in my coffee is going to make that happen, right? Even huge amounts of oil in my coffee.
I was just about to say, did you put enough oil in your coffee?
I don't know, but maybe I didn't put the right kind of oil in my coffee. I don't know, man.
That's it, yeah. Or apple cider vinegar. You should start drinking apple cider vinegar. That would have made you...
By the barrel, yeah.
That would have made you a better entrepreneur a lot quicker than what you did, bloody hell.
But then also there's much less dramatic versions of this. So for example, with my exercise, I had a pretty solid exercise habit for quite a long time. And then I lost it. And also I kept having physical issues. So I kept getting injured very quickly. And so I realized that, okay, there's something I have to change the way I think about exercise and the way I approach exercise in terms of I have to make sure that my posture is right. And I have to make sure that I build I have to anti-fragile my body, right? My body was basically too fragile, mostly because of posture issues. So it's like, okay, I have to fix that first. And I have to change the way I train. I can't just, for a long time, I was just chasing numbers, just trying to lift more and more weight. And that was motivated me. And so when I realized I can't do that anymore, or at least not the way I'd done it before, because then I just get injured all the time, I fell out of the exercise habit because then it's like, I don't know how to do this anymore, right? My whole mind and behavior was around how do I get stronger? How do I put up more numbers in the gym? But then you take that away and the whole habit falls apart because I don't know how to. I'm not the kind of person who exercises for a different reason yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the same. So that's basically this year, I've gone through this transformation where my outlook on exercise and the way I exercise and so on has changed. That's not a hugely dramatic change, right? I'm not a totally different person now. But it's still it's a bit of an identity change. And it's still, the rule applies. You want to change your life, you got to change your life, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah. And I've got 2 examples of this. One of them, and the thing is, it's actually pretty damn simple way of putting it, but it really helped me. And I'm still in the process of changing both of these things I'm about to mention. But one of them is, I've always desired, I've had brief periods in my life where I've had like a big friend group and stuff. And it'll come and go like phases in my life. But in those phases, there's a part of that I really enjoy. And there's something about that I want to intentionally cultivate, because when it's arisen in my life, it seemed to have just occurred by accident. Through no real effort of my own, it just seemed to be the result of circumstance. So to cultivate a better social life, I had to ask myself, and this was like towards the start of this year, I was spending my time alone most of the time. I don't mind being alone. I quite like it. But a person who has a thriving, exciting social life, you can find someone like that, and they're not spending most of their time just locking the door and just playing video games all night and seeing nobody. It's like, what? I had to ask myself, okay, well, what do I need to do differently? What kind of person do I need to become for this to become a reality in my life? And it's not the kind of person who spends Friday, Saturday, and Sunday alone, you know? It's like a person who goes out and socializes and stuff. And that's the reality of it. And that's more of a past thing, but that's like a past realization that's ongoing now. But the other thing is the past sort of couple of weeks, I've been tracking my heart rate variability and my resting heart rate. And I've been confronted with data that challenges and has challenged a part of my self-image I've had for a very long time. Because I've been a gym rat since I was like 15. So I've always just assumed that I'd be in really good health just because. But these results I've been getting show that I am far below average HRV for my age. And my resting heart rate is well, I'll say extremely high. They say the normal range is between 60 and 100 beats a minute. Mine's close to 100 whenever I measure it. And that's consistently throughout the day, not just in the morning either. And I'm still struggling with that. I'm still trying to work out why that is. But I think it's because when it comes to, the kind of person that you are, the kind of person that I am, like I train 5 times a week, but I lift weights. I don't really raise my heart rate that much. I don't do cardio. My diet has been pretty bad for a long time. Not horrific, not standard American diet, but it certainly hasn't been the kind of diet where you'd like, but man, that guy eats healthily. And I don't really move much outside of lifting a few weights in the gym. So I've had to sort of re-examine all of this in light of this new data. And it's like, okay, if I find someone who has like HRV of like 90, if I just found them and interviewed them, what can I expect? I can probably expect that they train pretty often. The cardiovascular fitness must be through the roof. They manage stress really well and all these things. That's the kind of person they are. So the example I'm giving here is like, okay, so I now need to basically reassess all of these things. Like what kind of person would I need to be? My heart rate variability to be really high and my resting heart rate to be really low. I had to re-examine the kind of person who values health rather than just looking good.
Yeah. That's a good example, and it is also, it puts a different frame on it if you think about it like that than just think about, oh my God, this is the problem. How do I solve this problem? I think it can often be a much more useful frame to think what kind of a person for what kind of person is this easy, or what kind of person is on the other end of the spectrum of this.
Yeah.
So let's go into practicals of how to do this. So I bet lots of people listening are like, okay, yes, I have this problem. I'm not an implementer. I'm someone who makes a New Year's resolution and then doesn't stick with it. I'm someone who said, I'm going to get fit and then didn't. I'm someone who, this is a very common problem, right? And if you're on board with, okay, you need to fix this as an important life skill, well, how do you do it? So here are a couple of practical things to do. The first I want to mention is related to something we already talked about in the series before, which is writing. So writing as a tool for thinking and gaining clarity is something I highly recommend. So again, if you're in this situation where there's some goal you want to achieve, some problem you want to solve, and so far you've had the problem of you're not an implementer, what you can do is you can try to take this apart in writing. So you sit down and write about, and you just start by describing the problem. Here's what I want to do. Here's the plan I make, and then here's what happens. You just try to be clear about, maybe to get clarity about what your habit loop looks like, or your behavior cycle looks like. So maybe your behavior cycle is, I make this big plan, I do all the research, I set up, like you said, I set up the database and so on, and then I say, I'll start tomorrow, and then I don't start. Or maybe your cycle is that I'm super motivated for like 3 days and I do loads of work, but before anything is finished, something always gets in the way, and that just throws me off entirely. And then, and there are many, many versions of this. There are many versions of this story. There's loads of ways in which you can, keep yourself busy without truly implementing. And so writing about it is just a very useful exercise to just gain clarity. Because here's what I bet will happen. When you sit down and write about this, you will see that even just in describing your problem, if you just aim to describe exactly your problem and your behavior in great detail, you will learn things about yourself that you weren't aware of. You'll read that back and go, oh, wow, that's what I do. And that is useful, because having clarity about what you do makes it easier to catch yourself doing it and not do it, right? To break the cycle, basically. Sometimes that's all it takes. So that's a really useful thing to do. And another thing is, I think usually the greatest learning is in our failures. You try to do something and you fail. That is the most interesting moment right there. So if I said, I'm going to go to the gym every day, and then I go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and on Friday I don't go, and that's the end of it. That day is the most interesting day, like that one and the one before, Instead of just thinking, oh, it was so easy on Monday and Tuesday, why can't it always be like that? And trying to, I don't want to think about Friday where I failed. No. That's the interesting, like what happened on Thursday and what happened on Friday, that was different. And one of the ways I think of this is try to look at your failure in slow motion. So it's like a car crash, I want to see the car crash in slow motion so that I can see, exactly where does the hood crumple and so on. That's how you make a more crash resilient car. You have to take a very close look at what happens instead of just being like, I don't want to think about it. It's, cringe.
Can you imagine if that's how they handled it? Oh, our car's crashed. Oh, I don't want to think about that. Don't come at me with that. Ugh.
Yeah, just don't mention it, okay? This is a sore spot for us.
It's a sore spot. We don't talk about that stuff around here.
Yeah, so look at your failures in slow motion and see, can you identify what happened? Can you identify in your behavior, maybe your thing is that you always take on too much and you go, I'm going to exercise an hour a day every day, and it's just too much. And if you change that to I'm going to exercise half an hour every other day, then you'd keep going and then you can slowly build up. Or your specific failure is going to be different. I could try to run through a bunch of examples, but depending on your goal and depending on who you are, like there's loads and loads of different versions of that car crash. And so it's up to you to examine it and figure out, okay, what can I learn from this? If this is, basically, what can I take from this as a lesson? What can I tweak next time around? And which also involves the other thing. So you write about this, you write about the problem, you look at your failure in slow motion, and then you write about, well, what could I do differently? And what's often a good approach is to do something slightly differently. Because two mistakes we make is, one, you just keep trying to do the thing that's not working. So you always fail at the same thing. Then you blame yourself. You just say, well, I'm just, if I had more willpower or something, I would do it. And then you muster the motivation again and you try to do the same thing again that you already failed at 15 times. And guess what? You're failing at it again. That's not a good idea. The other mistake we can make is that we say, okay, I tried this. It didn't work. I'm going to scrap everything and do something completely different, because then you can't learn from that, So you want to have whatever the goal is, you make an attempt, you fail, you take a look at that and you think, okay, with the same goal and the same basic idea, what can I tweak in order to give this another shot? And if you keep doing that, then you're learning every time you fail and you get better and better.
And that's as opposed to just failing, struggling, and not wanting to look at it.
Yeah. And writing is just the best way to bring these things into your consciousness and gain clarity about these things, instead of it just like being confusing and frustrating.
It's a form of, we've mentioned this before, it's a form of externalizing it and creating some distance between you and the problem. I mean, sometimes I'll sound like an absolute nutcase, but sometimes I'll talk to myself. Like sometimes I don't want to write. Sometimes the act of writing, it's just, I don't know, like I'm agitated or something. I'm just like, I'm not interested in that. So I'll go for a walk and then I'll act like I'm on the phone and just speak to myself as if I'm speaking to a friend through the phone who's going through the same problem or whatever. And usually I can reach states of realization or states of clarity through doing that.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how, I just wonder if I'd have never started writing or I never started even questioning this stuff. Like how would you ever get through these problems? How would you ever how would you ever choose another option? You wouldn't have the choice, would you? Like you'd have that life option just grayed out constantly.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of people are stuck. I mean, that's the source for massive frustration. And about the thing, I do something similar. So sometimes I also don't feel like writing, and I will do audio recordings. So I will also just on the phone open the recording app and speak into it. And that's generally when I also want to get an idea out of my head or work through an idea. And just like you, sometimes I just feel like, no, I don't want to sit down or even stand and write. I want to be walking. And then audio recording is great. And I can then listen back to it and maybe turn it into notes later.
Yeah, audio recording. There's times when I've done like a little vlog just for myself. Just the only person who's ever going to see this video is me. And I can just be as insane as I really indulge in that as well, because no one's ever going to see it. So I'll just let it all hang out.
Nice. Yeah.
And that feels pretty damn cathartic. But yeah, I think you're right in when you say that you think this is where a lot of people are stuck. Mm-hmm. And this is another reason why social, like real, authentic connections with other people are important. Because this kind of stuff, the benefit you'd get from writing or from talking to yourself or video, voice recording it, you can have those benefits through just a conversation with someone who wants the best for you. Yeah. You talk about your problem, and it's not as if you know the problem in its entirety and you're talking to them in a purely well-articulated way, if only. It's like you articulate the problem as you're talking. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so if you don't have writing, if you don't have any way of externalizing your thoughts, and you don't talk to anyone, Jesus,
Yeah, but writing, it's true, and I think often like a good friend is a great sounding board for this kind of thing. But yeah, writing is. I also like writing because it brings a level of clarity that you often don't get from speaking, because it's kind of a bit more slow and more deliberate, and you're always confronted with what you just wrote. It kind of has this permanence, which gives a different quality, and it's something you can always do. You can do even if you're alone, if you don't have friends to talk to, you can still write. So, okay, writing. The next thing is we've talked about this before, the idea that everything is practice.
Yeah.
And a version of that is you can also think of it as everything is an experiment. Everything is an experiment to see what happens. Everything is an experiment to see, how can I improve this? How can I tweak this? Like I said before. And so one thing that I would recommend for making progress on this kind of thing and becoming an implementer is to try many things, like with an experimental mindset. Again, it's not, you don't have to find the perfect solution. You don't have to have the perfect training plan, the perfect business plan, the perfect whatever. So don't worry about optimization, worry about implementation and treat it as an experiment. Try a bunch of things and see which things are easy. So this is a bit of a cheat code for life, where, again, let me use a health-related example because it's very easy to visualize. So you can forever struggle with the problem of, oh my God, I'm just always eating sugary foods and it's so hard, and I try to not eat sugary foods, but then I fall back into it and so on and so forth. It can be this massive struggle, right? But, and we talked about this on the physical episode with the green smoothie, right? What if you make a green smoothie that you really like, is really tasty, it's convenient to make, it's easy to make, you really like it, and it happens to be super healthy? Well, that's something to pay attention to. Instead of it being this slog of, oh my God, I can only ever eat food that's like bland and healthy. It's like, no, what if there's just some food that you really like that also happens to be healthy? And the more of that you eat, the less of the bad stuff you eat. So we talked about this, right? This kind of this displacement idea. And the same idea applies to other aspects of, and other goals. So for building a business, right? You want to build a business, there's loads and loads of aspects to that. And some of them, or even just, there's loads of different business models. And some of them would have you do loads of work that you hate. And if you're totally bought into the hustle culture, then you're like, yes, this is it. I'm suffering every day. I hate every minute of my life. This is what I have to do to succeed, right? But there are business models where you're like, oh, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy this work and it feels good and I like this better than most other things I did. And also it's helping me succeed, And of course, it's unlikely that you will find any kind of setup where everything you do, you love, right? And that's the same for everything. So, it's unlikely you'll find a business model where you just love every minute of it and you're super successful. It's unlikely you find an exercise program where you're just always only having fun. It's never difficult, but then you get super fit. No, it's probably not like that. But you can find the things that you enjoy the most. And maybe you can attach some of the things you enjoy less to those things, So instead of, again, with the exercise example, instead of going to the gym and just suffering the entire time, I can go to the gym, I can do my favorite exercises, and then I also do some stretching, even though I don't like it that much.
You can eat broccoli while having sex. Combine the two, Might be a little bit awkward, but...
Genius.
But you say everything is practice and everything is an experiment. I think that's really cool. I think it's something to repeat. That really helps. Because you actually helped me with the experimentation principle when I first came to Lisbon. Because it was like, it seems like a problem I've more or less solved now, but it will come back, I'm sure. But it's this idea of how can I accept, if I accept myself fully, won't I just never do anything ever?
Mm-hmm. Just lose your motivation.
Yeah,
you're just so self-accepting.
Yeah, and I came to you with this problem. I was thinking, because it was very much like a knot in my psyche that was preventing me from just being okay with myself. Is this belief that I need to not be okay with myself, because then I'll achieve things and then I'll be able to do stuff. And I came to you with this problem. You were like, try it out. Wouldn't that make a great story? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that make a brilliant story? Man accepts himself, proceeds to just sit there and just eat pizza all day.
Life quality rapidly deteriorates.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah, we said that was like a news article headline.
Yeah. Man accepts himself, experiences rapid deterioration of life quality as a result. It's like everything falls apart because you accept yourself now.
And just the accompanying image of him eating pizza, smiling, but they're just like everything's on fire around him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good example because it's funny. That's something that comes up a lot in self-development. It's like, oh, what about, how do you square self-acceptance with ambition and stuff? It's like, try it out. See what happens if you just fully accept yourself. See if your fears come true.
Yeah, and not only is this principle, the experimentation principle, helpful in that example, but in so many other examples too, that I can just sort of think of. Brain
Think
dump.
of one.
Think of one right now. No, what was it? What was I going to say? Yeah. So this experimentation principle, it seems to be helpful to me because what you can run into in so many different areas is like paralysis by analysis, which is exactly the case for me in that example. Is that you think, what if I do this and then that happens? What if then that happens? But I need to think about this and then this might happen. It's like, why don't you just not overanalyze this, and why don't you experience it for yourself? And why don't you be the person who experiences something and then can tell a story about it that someone else might read and then be like, oh, that's not like me. Why don't you be that kind of person?
Yeah. And if you're for people whose main problem is like fear, right? If you're very fearful of taking that step, if you're basically afraid, well, you feel like I have to plan for all possible contingencies. And what if this goes wrong and I'm not prepared and so on? It's like, I totally understand that. I'm also a very risk averse person, but again, instead of being lost in this, in constant thinking about possible negative scenarios and so on, you can, pick a small enough step where you can say, well, the possible downside here is small enough that if I try this out and it doesn't go well, it's not going to ruin my life. And I don't have to know every step afterwards, and I don't have to plan for every possible contingency. Because often we fantasize about problems that are actually so far away. It's like, to just get there to experience that problem. Like, just start taking a step. And it's just also something that is good to be aware of. And writing, to go back to that, is going to help you uncover this. It's going to help you that maybe you're this neurotic person who's constantly afraid of stuff, and then you can write about, well, okay, how likely is this to happen? And what's the potential downside? What's the potential upside of doing it anyway, and so on, right? You can take this kind of stuff apart in writing and get to a point where you're just like, okay, well, I can take this step, So, okay, another thing I want to mention. So there's two more things. One is the information diet, and the second one is the idea of working the system. And so let's do the information diet first. This one is fairly simple. Like we mentioned before, if your problem is that you're not implementing, then piling more and more information into your skull is not going to help at some point. And chasing more and more optimization is not going to help either. So,
sorry, just to clarify, when you say chasing more optimization, what exactly do you mean?
So looking for the optimal before you're doing, So thinking, I can't start a business until I have the perfect optimal stack of tools for all of my marketing, all of my advertising, for my website, for the integrations, and so on and so forth. But you haven't even started. You don't have a website yet, But you're worried about, I can't start unless I have it all figured out. Or, I'm not going to go to the gym until I have the perfect training plan for me and my body type and my goals and so on. It's like, no, just start, right? Because optimization is something to do when you're in motion. It's not something to do before you are in motion.
Got you.
Basically. So, and more information can be detrimental, because it then, you had your training plan, you were about to go, and then you see another headline says, new study shows this is actually bad and this is actually good. And you go, oh my God, I have to throw everything out and start from scratch. No, just start. And in this sense, one of the ways you can think of this is be selfish in your pursuit of information. Like, don't let sources of information become sources of distraction for you. And an information diet can be really, really useful, where you can just say, okay, I'm just going to, and one of the reasons I recommend this is because I do this a lot. Like, when I focus on something, I develop tunnel vision to an extent to sometimes a pretty extreme extent, where just like nothing can get through to me because I'm so focused on doing the thing and on actually making progress towards my goal. And I think it's just really, really useful, because information it basically has the two sides. Information can be very, very helpful. And, I'm forever grateful for a lot of the information I've come across in books and on podcasts and everywhere, basically. Amazing. But information can also be this distraction because it demands your attention.
Yeah.
And it takes your time to consume. And then it can send you into this, oh, wait, am I doing the right thing? Should I change? And so on and so forth, right? And so because of that, it has to be treated as it has to be, it's almost like slightly volatile, right? It can be really good, but it can also blow up in your face. And so what I do is that I just notice that there is this balance between action and information, where the more I get into action mode, the more I put on the blinders when it comes to information inputs. And I say this also, as a practical example of this, there are podcasts I really like. There are some podcasts that are my favorite podcasts, but I don't listen to all episodes. There's not a single podcast that I listen to all episodes of. And it's simply because of this, because what will happen is that, I read a book or I listen to a podcast episode or something and I learn something that I go, I want to do this. And then I start doing this. And because it takes me several weeks or several months to do this, all the episodes in between, I don't want to hear from you. Like, even if you're my favorite business guy or life development, I don't want to hear from you because I'm focused on doing this thing right now, right? And I also say this, I know that I'm kind of digging my own grave a little bit here because, hey, we're a podcast. We're trying to help you improve your life. We're giving you information, right? But I literally mean this even for us. Look, of course, our goal is to keep, talking about ideas that are important and keep giving people tools that help them build a better life. But this applies to us too. If you are being interrupted by this episode from implementing the stuff you learned 3 episodes ago, then stop listening. Stop listening until you've done the thing.
Got you. So I wonder if there are, I just don't know how many people this would apply to, but people who would be better served by actually reading less.
Yeah.
And this is weird because on the one hand, I'm like, reading is great. Reading is like transformative and reading transformed my life and stuff. But there are periods where, if I look back, especially retrospectively, that more information was hindering me and it was preventing me from seeing what was truly important. If I was taking in information on social media, podcasts, audiobooks, I was taking in all this stuff when there were things that were immediate, that required my immediate attention in my life that I could have paid attention to, but I was too busy with thinking about other things that didn't have direct application.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that if like this person needs to read less. It's like it's about where you're at in your life and what you need to do. You can make that call.
Yeah, and it's also about awareness again, because if you can just be aware, like, okay, am I just distracting myself with more information? Am I reading this book? Am I reading the 15th business book, even though I haven't started building my business yet? Is that how I'm distracting myself from actually doing the thing, or is this actually helping me? And just have this level of awareness and unjudging awareness. Awareness where you can just say, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm procrastinating by reading books. And that's okay. It's okay. It's there's no need to attach any additional negative emotions to that. You just observe this is what I'm doing, and then you can change. And actually this leads well into my final point here, which is to think of what you're doing as working the system. So what you want to be doing is, and this is how I think about lifestyle design essentially, which includes habit building and reaching your goals and becoming the person you want to be and so on, right? You have the results you're getting right now in life are a result of a highly complex interconnected system. And that system includes you, your mind, your psychology, your past experiences, your relationships, your environment, the food you eat, the information you encounter, and so on and so forth. But basically everything feeds into this system and leads to the outcome that you're getting. And so you can think of it dispassionately. You can essentially take a step back and say, I can kind of look at it, and here's Shane inside this highly complex system, and all the stuff that's happening is leading to the outcomes that Shane is experiencing. And then I can look at that and say, which parts of this system can I tweak? Which parts of this system can I change? And what effects will these changes likely have? And that is how you want to experiment on this. And here's an example of how you can think of this. Like, imagine that you have a factory that makes cars. So cars are coming out at the end, coming out of the end of the process. And you're looking at these cars and you're seeing that the wheels are like not aligned and the cars are blue, but you wanted a red car. Now you can be really mad at this. You can be angry at the car for not having straight wheels and for being the wrong color, but that's not going to help, right? It's too late. You can also be angry at the factory or the person managing the factory or whatever you want to. You can be angry. It doesn't change anything because this factory is currently successfully and reliably creating blue cars with misaligned wheels. All right. The system is doing that. Well, you can say this is a mistake. This factory is making a mistake. Well, no, the factory is not conscious. The factory is successfully producing this outcome. And basically the point here is like any emotions that you add to it just don't make a difference. You can look at this and say, oh, there must be something wrong in this process because this car is supposed to be red and the wheels are supposed to be straight. So what's going on? And you can look at which part is successfully creating bent wheels and which part is, well, obviously, the color part is pretty easy. There must be the wrong color in the thingies, whatever the things are. That, I imagine there's some tank with color in it or whatever. I don't know how cars are made.
Should be. I think you spray it, you spray it with
There's some
cans.
container with the wrong color
somewhere,
in it, right? And you can swap out that container. That's the easy problem. But also the wheels, again, you can think of it as this factory is making a mistake or someone is making a mistake. But no, you can think of it as the system, this entire system is successfully creating cars with misaligned wheels. You can go in, you can tweak that to make sure that the wheels are straight. And you can do that completely dispassionately, or you can be super angry about it. It doesn't really make a difference, right? But your emotions are not going to improve the situation. It is the work on the system that's going to improve the situation.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So the factory in this analogy is essentially your life, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just the entire system.
And when we say the entire system, you're talking about your lived experience, the results that are coming through.
And the car in this case would be, some outcome that you want.
Right.
You want a thing, but it's not coming out the way you want, essentially, right? Or you're not on the path to your goal, basically. And so you can think of this like a system where you can say, okay, the system is currently successfully creating the results that you're getting. And which parts of the system can you tweak in order to change these outcomes? And this is just it's a different way to think of it. And the same thing applies, your emotional reaction, you're being angry at yourself or disappointed or feeling shame and guilt and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter. That's not going to fix the problem. There are parts in this system that if you changed them would lead you to the results that you want. And you don't have to be mad at anyone. You can just work on the system.
Well, that to me, that right there is it's like a caricature. What you've just said, it's like you've spoken as conscious, rational mind against emotional, chaotic, unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you don't have to be mad, but it's like when emotion is triggered, it doesn't need reason to exist. It's like it's triggered, and it's not rational because rational speaks in a different language to it in pure raw emotional energy. So it's like, so that's how it is. But one thing here, which is why I'm glad you've sort of addressed this, is to do this dispassionately and to like examine the system dispassionately. That can be, to me, that seems like that will be a challenge if you have, you really desire something, you really desire a result in the system. Yeah. Your emotions, by the very nature of that, are invested in this. Mm-hmm. But something that I think we could talk about this for a long time is like how you actually you diffuse the emotional impact of this that's almost clouding your thinking about this.
Yeah.
And we could talk, as I say, we could talk about how you do that for ages. But one thing I wanted to further the point you made about the system, is the system, in my mind, is far more complex than you can comprehend. So the results that you're experiencing in your life in, say, a certain area, you can probably trace this event. So say, for instance, you want to improve your dating life and a woman rejects you. You could be like, oh, God damn it, I've been rejected because I'm such a loser. It's like, that's a very narrow view of the situation. But if you just looked back with a broader lens, with a bigger lens, what you'd see is that this one event is tied to this and then that and then this and then that. Her rejection of you was tied to the fact that her boss called her something the other day, and then she's worried about that, and then it's like, and then that just goes off in that direction till the beginning of time, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And there's like every event eventually just traces it goes back till the beginning of time, essentially. Yeah. So the system is so much more complex than we give it credit for. And when you accept that, and when you keep that front and center in your mind, that almost has a humbling effect where it's like, look, I don't know. This result occurred, but I don't know. I don't know this, but I don't know the full extent of what's going on here, but what can I do about it?
Yeah, and this is where the experimentation comes in. It's like you don't have to understand the full system or whatever, but you can look at the system and say, okay, what can I try? What can I try? Where can I try to make the tweak to improve the outcome? You can do that without having to understand the whole system and having to know everything.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that could easily keep someone paralyzed.
Yeah.
Is they have an emotional reaction to the result of a system, which is just the result of a system. There's nothing emotional in it. It doesn't say anything personal about you. And what you'll end up doing is just trying to over-examine everything. Your thoughts just go off in all directions and you're trying to understand it.
Yeah, and so if we go back to the car analogy, right? So the car's coming out with crooked wheels. You go, well, I don't know why this is happening. Clearly, we built the factory with the intention of the wheels being straight. But let's start walking through the assembly line and figure out what's going on. And where would you start? Well, probably let's see how the wheels are assembled. Let's see if the problem is there. Or maybe it's later on. Maybe the wheels are assembled straight and then they get knocked out of place sometime later on. It's like you don't have to know the answer. You go and have a look. Okay, is the problem here? Try to change something? No. Is the problem here? No. And you don't have to know the answer before you walk onto the floor and start poking at things.
Yeah, okay.
And the other thing, well, it's a good point about, okay, you can't just decide to be unemotional about something. Which is it's good that you pointed out, because I wasn't trying to suggest that you just turn off your emotions. The reason I mentioned the emotional part is because we have to be careful not to delude ourselves into thinking that we are solving the problem via emotion. And the most clear example of this is when we use self-punishment to kind of repent or to make up for something. So I said I wouldn't eat the donut, but then I ate the donut. Now I'm making myself feel really bad about it. Right? I'm saying nasty things to myself in my head. I'm really stewing in this bad feeling. And when I've done that enough, it's good, right? I've paid for my sins. And this is, I don't know, man. It's a very Catholic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Tell me your sin, and I'm going to tell you how long you have to kneel and pray to make it good, right? You say, okay, well, I ate a donut when I didn't want to. It's like 15 minutes of feeling bad about myself. That should get me in the clear. And then I'll have another donut. And I can pay for having the donut with 15 minutes of feeling bad. So we are deluding ourselves into thinking that the making myself feel bad is the solution, right? And you can also rationalize it by saying, well, if I make myself feel super bad about it, I won't want to do it again, right? So it's the idea that more punishment, eventually more and more punishment is going to change my behavior. Eventually, I'm not going to reach for the donut because I punish myself so harshly afterwards. And guess what? You're still going to reach for the donut. So this is the delusion you have to avoid, is to think that the solution is to get really mad at the factory, like really mad. And then eventually the cars will come out right.
Avoiding using emotionality in the belief that it will get you there, rather than just allowing it to be there. Because obviously an emotion will crop up as a result. If you're invested in the system running well and producing good cars, you want that to happen.
Yeah.
The emotions will, and if you see bent wheels, obviously you're going to be disappointed in the bent wheels. And if you sit with it, the emotion will be there, and you can just let it pass and then make a rational decision and stuff. But if the emotion comes up and then you then say, right, I need to, in some way keep this emotion around because that's going to drive me to create better cars. Yeah. It's like you're intentionally keeping the emotion around that's unpleasant in the belief that it'll eventually get you somewhere.
Yeah. Or, we can go even further and say, well, the emotion is a part of the system. You are trying something, you're experiencing something, and you're reacting to it with a certain emotion, and that cycles you back to the beginning, where you try the same thing, you fail the same way, you feel bad, cycle back to the beginning. That is the system.
I like that. I like the elaboration on the analogy there, that emotions are part of the system, rather than an emotion in this metaphor being seen as like an undesirable sort of byproduct that you're like, meh, get rid of that. It's like, one, good luck with that. And two, that's just repression right there. Yeah. So I like to think of these emotions as like a signpost,
Yeah.
And to an extent.
And also emotions can be a part of a cycle where you do something, you feel good about it, and that cues you into the next thing, you do it again. So there's a virtuous cycle version of this where the emotion is completely welcome.
Yeah.
That is part of the cycle that keeps you moving towards your goals. That's great. So yeah, that's a good point. So another thing to say about this, like specifically when it comes to the idea of being an implementer, that is the part of the system you want to be paying attention to. Like, why don't I implement the thing? Why don't I do the thing that I meant to do, that I want to do, that I know would be good for me? And that's the part of the system you want to be working on, because And a great reminder for this is just the obstacle to your task is your task. So if I say, I want to reach this goal, but then I get stuck here because I don't do the things I intend to do, that's the obstacle. I have to solve the problem of I don't do what I intend to do, which is why we're talking about being an implementer in this general sense. It doesn't matter what goal it is. It doesn't matter what change you want to make. This is step one where most people, or where lots and lots of people fail at lots and lots of things. As this general, you're not doing the thing. And so treat that as the task. Treat that as that's the thing you need to be working on. That's the thing you need to tweak until you find yourself taking consistent steps towards your goals.
So an example crops up here that I just want your thoughts on. So there's something I've talked about with you a few times, is this idea of neurotic friction.
Mm-hmm.
So neurotic friction, basically, the way I describe it is neurotic thought patterns, essentially slowing you down and providing way more friction of completing a task or making changes in your life than would be actually I was about to say than would be necessary, but it's like any kind of neurosis. It's like let's try not to keep that around. But I was thinking in terms of the obstacle to your task is your task. So I've always had this kind of sense that while I could force myself to either like create a business or force myself to do a bunch of things, there's always been this neurosis that's kind of held me back. So I've intuitively had the sense that this actually is the real issue. It's like I could force myself to just complete all these tasks and create businesses and just be miserable through it all.
Yeah.
But the real obstacle here is what do I really fear? Like what's this neurosis? What's the base of it? Where's it coming from? I want to solve this problem so that I can achieve these things, probably with a sense of grace and a sense of peace and stuff. And I can actually do the things still, but without suffering so much.
Yeah.
So I just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
Well, the important thing there is to acknowledge that the best way to solve this kind of problem is in doing the work. So, let's take dating as an example, where of course you can say, well, I have all these insecurities, all this stuff going on inside me that is an obstacle to me having a good dating life. And so I'm going to retreat into my room and read and study and meditate and so on and so forth, because that's my task. That's my obstacle. No, that's avoiding the obstacle, right? That's avoiding the confrontation with the obstacle. So the way to solve the problem is, yes, to acknowledge there's this stuff. Maybe I just have like cripplingly low self-worth or something. That's the main obstacle here. I need to work on that. But how do I do that? Well, the confrontation with asking a girl out on a date is what makes that flare up, right? That is where it comes out. As long as I'm sitting at home in my room, reading books about masculinity and dating and God knows what, I'm fine. This thing is not coming up, and I can write about it. Oh, I think I'm really making progress on this, blah, blah, blah. I'm seeing this in a different way now. And then what happens when you talk to a girl? Boom, you're hit with this thing again, which turns out you haven't done anything about, right? Again, mental masturbation. So yes, so again, it's great that you bring this up, right? Because there are people who would immediately, run into their little cave and be like, yes, I'm going to work on the obstacle.
Do the difficult thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. You do it in motion, right? You go out and you confront that problem. You do it in motion. And so it's the same with, building a business where you can say, yes, okay, there's various obstacles, but you work on the obstacles by building a business. That's how you actually confront and solve that obstacle.
You solve it. Okay, so you solve it through motion. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. So rather than, because you can easily see how a person like myself, like a previous version of myself, definitely did this, fall into this trap of thinking that I need to solve this problem. I need to reach this state where I'm completely non-neurotic, and then I will be able to achieve all these things easily.
Yes,
and that's a trap. One, because it's not going to be easy no matter what, and two, because that's giving yourself permission to basically dick around doing nothing for ages.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate that kind of sums up my YouTube career. Like up to this point, it's just basically me having all these like philosophical things, but I'm just in my room. Like, yeah. I've not actually done anything different. And it's funny because I can see that now, because over the past 6 months, I've actually been doing loads of things differently. More in 6 months than I have over the past 3 years. So it's just one of those interesting things. But yeah, I'm glad.
So, okay. And also, when we talk about this, like, let's also just briefly talk about in practicals, how do you do this? And one key idea here is to start small. So because like we've said this the whole time, right? You need to be actually moving towards your goal. You need to do the actual work. But how do you do that? Especially if you're a non-implementer. Well, take really small steps. And this is worth trying, the idea of basically planning to take a step that is so small it feels like it's not enough. And so an example of this is, I think BJ Fogg might be, he's a professor of psychology or neuro something. He's kind of the godfather of behavioral design. And he might be the originator of this, but anyway, I heard it from him. This idea of, tiny habits is what he calls it. And his example of this is to floss one tooth. So he noticed that if he tells himself, like his dentist tells him, you should floss your teeth every day. Like he doesn't do it, it just takes too long, it's too cumbersome. But if he tells himself, I'm going to floss one tooth a day, then two things happen. First of all, it's such a small task that it's really like, you can't really say, this is going to take too long. It's going to take like 3 seconds. And secondly, while you're at it, now you've flossed one tooth and you're like, this feels kind of good. I'm doing the thing. I might as well keep flossing my teeth.
I'd be surprised if he ever stopped at one tooth.
Yeah.
He probably did. To just
to prove a point.
To just prove a point. Like, no, I said I'm going to floss one tooth and I will.
Yeah.
That's one tooth done. There we go.
Yeah. And also in a very pragmatic sense, like flossing one tooth a day would still mean that it would take you, I don't know, a month or so to get all your teeth done, right? Let's say if you occasionally do 2, right? It takes you about a month. So then at least every tooth is getting like flossed once a month. That's better than never. That's better than never.
That's a very good point.
So another example of this is from Matt Mullenweg, the founder of Automatic, the company behind WordPress. And he talks about how he does 1 push-up a day. So same idea, right? He wanted to exercise more, but he's one of these people who just works all the time. He just always finds himself working instead of doing stuff that's good for his health. So instead of being like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and do this and do that, it's just I'm going to do 1 push-up a day, which again, it's too easy. Who can't do a push-up a day? And the same thing happens. Like now you're already down there. You might as well do some more, right? You might as well finish a set. And now you've already worked up a bit of a sweat. Maybe you're going to do some pull-ups too or something. But it's this thing where, okay, I'm going to do 1. And that is something I really recommend trying, because a typical mistake we make and that keeps us from being good implementers is that we try to take on too much. We think we have a surge of motivation. We think, I'm going to do all these things, from tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. I'm going to meditate and this and that and the other and so on. And it's too much.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, I want to build a meditation habit, I'm going to meditate for 1 breath. I'm going to sit down and do 1 mindful breath. That's it. I'm going to do that every day. Start there. It feels way too easy. It feels almost like insultingly easy, but that's good. That's easy to implement. And you can start building a track record of implementing.
That's cool. But the thing is, for me, what comes up when I think of doing 1 push-up or 1 breath is I just think, well, that's pointless. And then there's another reason to not bother. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, there's absolutely no point in doing that. Why would you bother? I'd rather do 5. So it's like I'd rather reach a tipping point where it's like, okay, it's worth doing it, but it's not so little that it's just like 1 push-up point.
Yeah, but even there, I think that 1 mindful breath a day, 1 push-up a day, it's better than nothing. It's like very, very marginally better than nothing, but it is better than nothing.
Yeah, this is true. I tend to have an all or nothing mindset on certain things. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And this was my problem with exercise for so long. By the way, I would always have this intricate training plan, and then so the idea is, today I work out these muscle groups and this many sets and so on and so forth, and it takes an hour. But then I have a busy day and so on. By the end of the day, I'm too exhausted, and I think I'm not going to train at all because I want to be able to do this tomorrow. So if I do some training today, then tomorrow I'm going to have to rest these muscles, in order to follow the optimal system and so on. So instead of doing that, I'm not going to do it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then guess what? I didn't do it the next day either. So it's like I keep pushing the optimal perfect training ahead by 1 day at a time. And what I do now is I constantly just do these micro workouts where I do some squats, I do some push-ups, whatever. And it accumulates. And this is one of the interesting things. It accumulates. And I most clearly noticed this with meditation. So with meditation, I've done all kinds of experimentation with meditation. And in general, it's a great, very beneficial practice. And so for a period, I did at least an hour of meditation a day. And it was really, really difficult. I really struggled to do this, but I kept it up for quite a long time. And after that, the next experiment I did was micro meditations, where I just thought, it's kind of in contrast to that. You know, I'd spent several months just doing these long meditations and found it really hard. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm just going to meditate however long I want. I'm going to sit down, and if I want to get back up after one breath, that's fine. But I'm going to do that many times a day. And the crazy thing is, I used a timer and tallied it up, and many days I'd do an hour or more in total, right? Just in short sessions, none of which felt difficult. But at the end of the day, I have like 59 minutes or 67 minutes or something like that of total meditation time. And of course, you can say, well, it's not the same doing it, you know, in small parts instead of in one go, which is true. But still, I think there's a different kind of benefit, right? There's a certain kind of benefit you get from long meditations. There's another kind of benefit you get from frequent meditations. And overall, I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. You know, there's just different benefits. But it's just crazy how, you know, so much suffering for an hour a day versus, this is easy, for an hour a day.
Yeah, it's if in the suffering of meditation you actually experience something from it. What comes to mind with me is that the Arnie quote that it only counts after it starts hurting, after it starts burning.
Yeah,
you know, and I don't know if the same thing can be applied to meditation, because it's very much the case that a person can sit and have their 20-minute or 30-minute meditation session in the day and then have road rage in the car on the way to work.
Yeah,
it can happen because that mindfulness doesn't permeate the rest of their day. They carve out a small space for it, and somehow, bizarrely successfully, seem to just section that off from the rest of their life. So I guess taking short micro meditation throughout the day can have that benefit, but it can also miss out the sort of perhaps more deeper introspective potential of longer meditations.
For sure, yeah. And I'm sure we'll probably do some episodes on meditation as well. So the last thing I want to say about all this, to round all this off, is if you haven't seen it yet, go read the Whole Food Island post. So we have an article on Icario.com. It's called Whole Food Island, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. And there we talk about, this is about working the system in a way of basically looking at the environment and the effect your environment has on your results. And this is a much more important point than basically anyone realizes until they read that article. So if you haven't done that yet, this is one of my most important messages on this topic. So go to Icario.com/008 for the show notes for this episode. Check out the Whole Food Island post. And I think with that, we can wrap it up. There's a pretty long episode on how to become an implementer, but I hope this was useful. I hope you can see why this is super important. Like, this has to happen for you to get any value out of anything else we're going to be doing. And we're going to be doing a lot. So I hope this was useful, and let us know if you have any questions about this, and also rate us, give us, 5 stars or whatever the highest score is on whatever thing you use to listen to podcasts, and do all the other things.
All right, that's it. Yeah, I have nothing to add.
You have nothing to add.
Nothing to add at all. Enjoy yourselves. And yeah, be an implementer. Don't be an asshole. You've heard of that. Someone who asks loads of questions and takes no action on any of it.
Fair enough. Okay.
Don't be an asshole. All right, take care, guys.
Catch you next time.